Hogan Assessments just dropped research that proves what we've all suspected. The people getting promoted into leadership and the people employees want to work for, two completely different set of traits. Imagine that. Download their free global report at hogan.to/I hate it here. This is The Leadership Divide, a special podcast series of Hogan Assessments in partnership with I Hate It Here. I'm Hiba Yusuf, and this is the finale. I know I'm just as sad as you. Episode 4 of 4. Across this series, we've built the case. Leadership doesn't fail because people aren't trying. It fails because we select and develop leaders on the wrong criteria. This episode is the bill coming due. When leadership goes wrong, trust and belonging are the first to go. People stop using official channels and start whispering after meetings. And there's another cost that shows up in the data, a stubborn gender disparity among leaders that Hogan's research says is propped up by myths and not real differences. To close the loop, I'm bringing back the person who opened up this series. Allison Howell is the CEO of Hogan Assessments, where she leads the company's global strategy, product innovation, and market growth, advancing Hogan's mission to deliver scientifically rigorous, ethical, and impactful personality assessments that support better talent decisions worldwide. We started with why this moment matters, and we're going to end it with what to actually do about it. Let's get into it. Allison, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be back.
I have had such a blast throughout this series. Like, leadership is one of my favorite topics, but then everyone kept bringing the data, and I was like, wow, I get to geek out about my favorite topic, and I get to geek out about the data with these really cool people who know a lot.
You're in good company.
I know, and I'm so sad this is coming to an end because we've spent like 3 episodes making the case that we select and develop leaders on the wrong criteria, which every time I post a clip, people are like, preach, preach, louder, louder. But I have to ask you about the consequences of this. So we've talked about it in 3 episodes. Now the bill's due. What's the first thing that breaks when leadership goes wrong?
It is a big question, and there's so many different ways to take this. But to kind of bring it down to, brass tacks, the first things that go are the things that we outlined as the most important in previous episodes: communication, trust, sense of integrity. There's so much cognitive dissonance that comes up for people when they're working in an environment where leadership is just wrong. It's hard to talk about like how leadership goes wrong, because I think it's more likely to do it wrong than it is to do it right, because there's so many factors at play, and it can derail, as you know now with the learning about the dark side, that we can all derail in such different ways. But really, it is the degradation of the relationships that we have with other people, and that's really the starting point.
Yeah, and interpersonal relationships, there's a stat somewhere, I reference it quite a bit in newsletters, about amount of hours people spend in conflict in the workplace. And I'm just like, yeah, also when your leaders are bad and they're causing chaos, you're also navigating all that chaos in the workplace. And then where's their actual time to, I don't know, think about the work you need to get done?
Exactly. We're so wrapped up in our interpersonal relationships, and this person said this, and can you believe that this happened, and whatnot. It is a huge stress.
We're so complicated and messy. Okay, but let's talk about trust and belonging. Why are those canaries in the coal mine, and what does their absence actually look like day to day?
So trust and belonging we talk about them so much, and working in the HR space, you hear all sorts of things around the importance of belonging and psychological safety and trust and all that. I think it's important to call out exactly what we're doing here is why these things are important. And belonging is what gets you up in the morning, right? If you do not feel that you are part of something at work, you really lose motivation fast. You become disengaged. When you are working for somebody that you don't feel that you can trust, you feel like an outsider. You feel like you're kind of questioning reality always of, is this person telling me what I need to know? Do they really have my best interests? And with the amount of time that we spend at work, that's huge. You don't want to spend the majority of your life feeling uncomfortable and like you're not trusted, valued, you're not part of a team. And so that is just so important. It's really fundamental. And no matter which way leadership goes wrong, I think that is underlying all of this, that when you don't have trust, you don't have cohesion, you don't have that sense of attachment to the work that you're doing.
Yeah, the trust is everything. Like it's just one and I always say for HR, like I think we start from like a negative place of trust with employees, rightfully so. I think there are a lot of really bad HR teams. I was just recording a podcast episode, someone talking about this. Like it is hard to regain that trust once it's lost, but it's also just not freely given. So we have to think about trust is like a constant currency at work, something that we have to build towards, something that we have to be leaders that can actually instill that. Otherwise, the chaos just ensues.
Yeah. Actually, you're making me think of something that I hadn't considered before. Um, I think that I want to be really careful in talking about generational differences because I don't want to imply that there's ageism there, but I think culturally, generations experience very different things. And as people who are, older in the working environment, I mentioned this on the last podcast we did together, that there's sort of this expectation of an employer that, I think of my mom and her attitude towards work. And you sort of expect that your employer is going to be a benevolent person that's going to look out for you. And as long as you're showing up as a good worker, they're going to have your back. And I think most people who are Gen Z, well, I don't know if Gen Alpha is in the working world just yet, but
Oh,
people on the younger side,
God. Okay.
they've seen that breakdown in trust and know they come in naturally saying, I don't trust this work environment. This is corporate. They need to make money. They care about shareholder value above anything. And so I need to look out for myself. And I think we're seeing that friction right now.
Oh, for sure. And I think like so you have data. So Hogan's data shows that when trust breaks down, people stop doing things like using official channels, information gets sideways, like gossip
hmm
happens more, even though I do love there's a popular podcast about gossip, but bad gossip here. Why does that matter more than people think?
So a couple of things. One, I just want to point out that I'm mixing data sources a little bit, and so in talking about trust, leaning into some work that was not our work, but it was done by Edelman and looking at trust, and it breaks down how when trust goes to the wayside, people kind of retreat inward, and they don't want to share information. They're skeptical of the information that's coming to them. You
Yeah.
look for people in your small network that
Mm,
are like minded, similar, where you feel there's sort of that natural, even if it's not trust, there's a connection point and common ground.
yeah.
And so Edelman, it's a great report. I mentioned last time that looking at how that's happened over years, it's this, they call it a retreat into insularity, I think, where we're
Mm,
kind of in our echo chambers and only surrounded by like-minded people.
yeah.
Um, I think that is really interesting. To bring it back though to the gossip part, one, gossip isn't inherently bad. Some people might argue with me on that, but it's not inherently bad.
I
Gossip serves a really important purpose in society. Um, and I could get out my soapbox and go on and on about how gossip has evolved and how gendered it is and whatnot. But it's one of these things that is a lifeline for a lot of people. And so when you're in environments where trust is low, the only quote unquote reliable information you can get is oftentimes through unofficial channels
yeah.
like gossip. Now that comes with costs because you can't assume that it's reliable, of course, but when you don't know what's happening, you're going to go to these people in your inner circle and say, okay, what do you know? What do you know? And you're going to try to find out information. And so that fills a gap that exists when you have the official channels that you just naturally don't trust. And you have the people who are kind of in the trenches with you,
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to make sense of their working world. And that gossip's just going to proliferate when there's that breakdown.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the podcast. It was called Normal Gossip, where they talk about the role of gossip. I mean, I'm a fan, even though my
Yeah,
mom would tell me it's very
absolutely.
bad. But like, there's interesting things there. Like, what are people talking about at work or in the not official way? Because I can tell you so much about how people are really feeling and experiencing work. And there are trends to gossip that could be studied at work. Like if it's always about the same thing, if the same thing keeps coming up, like eventually you have to ask yourself, why is this thing being talked about?
Exactly.
And you
Exactly.
and you should figure out why.
Yeah. And I think this is something as I've changed in my role, my pipeline for gossip has gotten shorter and shorter. And I feel like I'm flying blind because there's something that's a little bit centering about gossip where you can think something's one way and then you hear bits of gossip from other folks and realize, oh, okay, actually there's a different perspective that I hadn't considered. And so it really helps balance out what's happening. But leaders, as they grow or rise within an organization, you don't get people being that honest with you. And it is such a valuable thing. It's really tough.
I would agree. You have to come back for another episode on just gossip. We can talk about the role of
Oh, I
workplace
could go
gossip.
deep. We can go back to like the witches of Salem and the role of
Yeah,
gossip.
I
I
was
mean,
I
I'm telling you, I think it's
remember
so fascinating.
same. It's actually so funny because my friend Ryan May calls me the lady whistle down of HR, and so now I just giggle about that. She's like, "Don't make me tell my friend she's the lady whistle down of HR," and I'm like, first of all, what kind of reporting do you think I'm doing? Like, I am not the lady. I'm not even a journalist. Like, I was like, I'm not a reporter. I'm a creator. She's like, it doesn't matter. I tell people not to make me angry because I'll tell the lady whistle down of HR. I'm like, please slow down, relax.
That's a gift to be the one in the know of
Mm,
things. Comes
I
with
love being
power.
in the know. It's very interesting. On the note of the no, I mentioned in my intro, like this gender disparity piece. Your
Hmm.
research, the research that you all found, has found out it's actually propped up by myths rather than real differences. What are these
Hmm.
myths we're talking about? What is the data actually telling you about gender disparity?
Yeah. So I had to write them down because there are numerous here, so I had to remind
Oh,
myself. But we did some really good research, and this is not something I can take credit for. Our research team ran with this, looking at personality differences across the globe, basically, and trying to really look and see if there are differences between men and women in personality. The short answer is no. There's a longer answer that I'll get to, but what we were really looking into was trying to test out these ideas of that women are not as ambitious as men are. Women are less decisive or less likely to take risks. Women aren't natural leaders. Women have to start acting more like a man in the working world to succeed. Women can't handle high stress roles.
you're all
Women
giving
are
me
less
the ick,
innovative or strategic.
Allison. I'm all
It's
like, ugh, no, not true.
I know. Well, I mean, if you're a woman in the workplace, you know these stereotypes very well, and it was really interesting to unpack it with clear data around like these personality characteristics that we have. The other part that was really interesting about this research was it was compared to performance data as well, and so seeing if a man and a woman are equal levels of ambition, the ambition scale are women kind of punished in the working environment? And what was really interesting about that is no, I fully expect it to be
Mm,
different.
same.
I had to sit with this for a while and say, wait a second, this is actually challenging my lived experience here and really try to unpack it. So I'll let you react to that because it is something you just kind of have to like, wait, what? No, that can't be right.
I also I think I need a minute. I need time out because like I felt the same way. I'm so when you started sharing this data, I honestly like parked up and leaned forward because so much of my lived experience when I'm reading research, I'm looking to validate, right? And when the research shows that that's not actually the case, I'm so curious as to why. Then, like, why did I have this experience? Is it a me problem, an environment problem, like that famous Taylor Swift joke, it's hi, it's me, I'm the problem, it's me. I'm like, I think
Mhm.
about that all the time. I'm like, is it me? So this data to me is quite surprising. Like I thought
Yeah.
you would have said yes.
Yes. So let me tell you where I've gone with this because we had this data come out and I thought, what am I supposed to do with this? If we're
Yeah.
saying there are no differences, what does that mean? Because there are differences. There are noticeable differences. And how I've been interpreting this is that personality can only explain so much.
Hmm.
And when broken down in the way that we do with our scales and subscales, we find these universal behaviors. How those behaviors are expressed in the real world changes depending on the context. And where we at our core might not be statistically different than men, how we learn to adapt is different. And so things like not being, or the stereotype around women not being a risk taker, that might just look very different. I might take risks, but it's not going to be the cliff diving kind of risk or like, let's bet all of this on
Yeah.
seven kind of risk. It might be a, hold up, I think that there's an interesting path we can take. Let me research it and see, and a quieter kind of
Yeah.
risk taking, if you will. You can't. It's not, it's like this or this necessarily, because there's all sorts of colors to the way that people express these things. But we're so accustomed to looking at things through looking at things through the lens of kind of this patriarchal approach that when women are actually showing their ambition or their risk taking capabilities, it just probably looks a lot different.
Yeah, that's so interesting. There was this article about how women are better investors than men. Like they do take risks, they do take good investment risks, but they take more calculated and like safer risks. I think was like the end of
Indeed.
the study that I read, which I was like, I'm fascinated because I'm like,
Yes.
oh, we're better investors. Like I bring that up so regularly to people too. I'm like, did you all know?
Yes. So
Better
if
investors.
there's one topic right now that I keep reading more and more about, which is the gender differences in AI use.
Yes.
And there's big pushes, huge PR pushes coming from Silicon Valley to try to get women
Yeah.
more
Yeah. Yeah.
engaged with AI right now. And there's this really lengthy report from Harvard Business Review, I think, that goes into actually, I think it's like country level differences and women, and really unpacks first, is it true? Is there a gap in use on AI? But then why? And when you really dig into it, you see that women are just much more, they think a lot more critically about the impact of AI, where it fits into your life. Like it is not women are not able to use AI. It's an active choice to not use AI because of the potential risks. And I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, when all the articles came out, it was like women are less likely to adopt AI. I'm like, are you? I wasn't surprised by that because I was like, knowing myself, like I don't speak for a whole group of people. Okay, I understand that, but I'm like, yeah, because a new tech comes out and I don't throw myself headfirst into adopting it. I stop and ask myself, like, what are the impacts of this thing that are going to happen? How is it going to be implemented? Who is it going to help or hurt? Who is it going to
Yes.
harm? Like those were the thoughts I was having with AI, and I
Yeah.
would still put myself more on, like, the skeptic side than the full adopter side. Like, I talk about use cases and how to use them in the newsletter, but I always say, "Don't forget there's these drawbacks too." You have to
Yeah.
remember sometimes there's bias. You have to also think about if you care about our environment, there's environmental impact to a lot of the tech we're using. Like, there
Yes.
are things to keep into consideration, and so also wouldn't was not surprised when that study came out, and the first thing they were saying, "We need more women in AI," and I'm like, "Do we, or do we all need
Yeah.
to have a collective pause and actually ask ourselves, what is this
Exactly.
tool going to do to our lives?" So,
Exactly. That is I right there with you.
okay, I need to talk about this real quick because it absolutely sent me. Hogan Assessments compared personality data from over 21,000 executives against what nearly 10,000 employees across 25 different markets want from a leader. When they looked at the top 5 competencies of current executives versus the top 5 competencies employees are begging for, guess what they found? That there's zero overlap. I wish I was joking. Hogan has the world's largest database of personality research, and they used it to create a free global report called The Leadership Divide. It quantifies the gap so you can finally stop explaining it in every skip level you've ever had. Download it at hogan.to/I hate it here. So as we're talking about this gender disparity, like for anyone who's listening and might be skeptical, what's the strongest evidence that the gap is about flawed criteria and not about real differences in capability?
This is it's a really good question to ask because I think if you were to just look at our data set, there would be a really strong inclination to say that can't be true. It's got to be something in the way that this is measured. Um, what tells me that this is actually really valid and we need to start looking elsewhere is part of our research that we've done for the last 40 or so years is constantly measuring for differences across different groups and adverse impact. So we have a library of studies looking at differences in gender, differences with sexual orientation, with race, with socioeconomic status, all sorts of things. And repeatedly, we find that there are no differences. And just the caveat, I should say there are no meaningful differences. Sometimes we'll see some statistical differences, but they're very, very small and really don't have any sort of real world impact. So the results of this research on the myths around women in leadership, it's not surprising when you put it in that context.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because I've sat with this for so much, just trying to think of, okay, what do I do with this? I think the takeaway is that we really need to stop talking about the challenges that women face in the working world as an individual problem and start saying, wait a second, this is systemic. And how can we make an impact on the systems?
Sure is. I came off of a call earlier today where I was ranting about how like such a small percentage of venture capital goes to women or underrepresented groups for funding. And I keep coming back to this overwhelming feeling that it doesn't, there's a bad reference, but a Taylor Swift song called The Man. And basically, in the whole song, she talks about how she wouldn't have to work as hard and her life would look different. And if she was just a man, she'd be granted these things. And I think about that so often when we're looking at this type of research, because I do wonder, like, if I was a man, like, would this look different? And hearing you say we can't address this as an individual problem. This has to be a real look at the systems we have into place. Um, it actually excites me because the system is where I think we can make real change. Like
Mhm.
even things like remote work is better for working mothers, or flexible working policies is better for working mothers. I like think about that, and I think systems we can fix. Individuals, I think we're each always going to be unique and special and different in our own ways. But I do think we can build better systems around supporting all types of leaders and not
Yeah.
just a certain profile has to be the
Yeah.
thing that we associate with leadership.
Right. Right. Exactly. On top of that, I think the conversation is so often pointed at the individuals because that feels more manageable, right? When we can change systems, right? It is a bigger lift and it requires working together and trying to really take a look at things and examining them to see if is this working for everybody or is this working for a select few. And so it can feel really daunting. So the individual is easier, but it's absolutely the direction that we need to go.
Yeah. Let's like zoom out for a second. If an org takes nothing else from this whole series where we've really been talking about this leadership divide, what's the one change to how they pick or develop leaders that would actually move the needle most?
Again, big question
I
because
know.
changing systems is
I'm
really, really hard.
Poor
uh,
Allison comes on the pod and I'm like, I'm gonna ask the hardest questions I could possibly think of, and I'm gonna demand. I mean, listen, like I understand, like we can't speak for everyone, and we don't have all the answers, but I think there's so much here and so much expertise and knowledge you have that could help people who are really trying to figure out. I don't want to keep messing up picking the wrong people for leadership. What can I actually do?
yeah, yeah. So I think the kind of the standard answer is we get questions like this all the time as we talk about what's wrong in leadership space. The kind of the easy answer, I think, is also hard to implement, which is changing the processes, making sure that processes for recruitment, hiring, selection, et cetera, are data driven, not based on biases and things like that. Development, making sure that there's clear opportunities for everybody and that the opportunities are tailored to individual needs and not kind of one size fits all approach and all sorts of different things. If I were to tell you, though, just change your recruitment processes, that's a little bit like, okay, why don't you just move this boulder up a hill?
Yeah.
Processes are in place; they're really hard to change. So, um, can I share? I've been sitting on this term for a while that I learned via TikTok, but it's
Uh,
just something that sits with me for a long time because so many people are like, okay, what can I do about it? It's, anarchist calisthenics. Have you heard of this before?
No,
Okay.
I
It's a little
haven't
wild,
heard of
but bear with me. So
it. Me.
it's not, it sounds a little bit nefarious, right? With anarchy in the
Yes.
name, but
Yes.
it's not. The idea underneath it is that with calisthenics, it's about small movements to kind of build strength over time, right?
Yeah.
So pushing against systems in very small ways over time builds up that strength and builds more momentum for changing processes. So if I'm in HR or if I'm in a leadership role, and I'm thinking, how can I tackle these processes? I think it really comes down to these small things and making sure that if I am a hiring manager and I'm recruiting somebody, I say, okay, let me make sure that I have the right data I need to evaluate. Maybe I need to lean into some best practices. And maybe it's not changing the process, but bit by bit you start kind of going against the grain and that becomes easier and easier to change the process.
I'd love. I The idea of small movements. I literally did this, just such a silly small movement. To make change, like, it can be so overwhelming when you're thinking about dramatically changing systems. In fact, this is like a book I want to write because I feel so passionate about it. It's hard to think of that dramatic to completely unravel something we've done for so long and try to build something new can be so overwhelming in a world where the average HR leader is already overwhelmed. We're dealing with AI. We're dealing with burnt out people. We're dealing with our own burnout. We're dealing with lack of resources, little support. We're trying to figure out the world post COVID, RTO, not RTO, like pay transparency, not like so many things. It can be so overwhelming to think that to change a whole system feels such a daunting task to take on.
Mhm.
So I love this idea of little things. Little things add up to something big someday. I've always said that walking every day can lead to maybe you're running a mile in a year. Working out and lifting 20 pounds can lead to lifting 50 pounds in 5 months, right? Like the little things can add up. And so I love this idea of thinking about what are the tiny things that I can just tweak lightly. And over time, potentially, then the outcome is the thing that I've very much wanted to change.
Yes. Yeah. I think along those lines too, it's not always easy to imagine what the impact of those small changes can have on other people too. It's sort of the butterfly effect idea. But it's the easiest path is to do things like they've always been done, right?
Oh,
Especially like you said, in this
oh yeah.
world of just crazy distractions and
Oh yeah.
all these technologies that are supposed to make our life easier end up just giving us more work and 8,000 platforms to check
Yeah.
messages on and things like that. It's really difficult. So going the path of least resistance and just saying, okay, somebody else did this, so I'm going to do it this way because this is how this has been done. It feels natural and it feels safe. But when you do change the trajectory, even just slightly, it can have such an impact and motivate other people. I actually just had a conversation with one of my coworkers where I kind of actively made a different choice than others would have made. And she reached out and she's like, this was really motivating for me to actually make some changes on my team too. And I
Yeah.
was blown away. It was really touching to hear that there was an impact like that.
Yeah.
But the more we see other people making these small changes, the more we feel like, okay, I can do this too, and we can tackle it. So you can slowly get that boulder up the mountain.
Yeah. I have such a negative reaction to people who are like, this is how we've always done it. Because I'm like, that doesn't work anymore. It didn't work 10 years ago, and it really does not work right now anymore. You cannot tell me this is how we've always done it. I also like, uh, excuse me for being such a nerd right now, but like, I believe that I have a creative, HR is a creative art that I am doing. I don't want to continue to
Mhm.
paint the same flower. I want to create something new and exciting and innovative. And that means like I have to make those little changes so that the portrait looks different a year from now. Like I just
Mhm.
don't think this job is meant to be this is how we've always done things because then we are not the strategic function I want us so deeply to be.
Yes. Yes. I love that. That's beautiful. And when you look at the complexity of people It is art. And I think sometimes, because I've been in the HR space for such a long time,
Yeah.
you kind of know the reputation that HR has in the
Oh,
rest of the world. And it's like, no, it is beautiful. People are so interesting, so unique.
yeah.
Yes, they can be really challenging at times, but it's worth it, right? It's
So worth
worth it
it.
to kind of work at making the workplace better and building these relationships.
I got that fight in me, Allison, don't worry. Someday I'll probably be like, "Too much. I have fought for too many years. I'm out." But until then, I will keep fighting because I just think work should look better for all of us. It can be better for all of us. We just
Mhm.
have to have the real hard conversations about what is not working and why. And this like
Yes.
very selection of leaders is probably a place where we could have such massive impact. Think of every single I don't know a single person at work who has not complained about a leader they have worked with or a manager that they have had.
Mhm.
So now imagine
Right.
if we got even better at putting the right people into those positions, what the world of work could actually look like.
Yes. Yes. I love imagining this. It's a little cheesy, but it just makes me think of the Barbie movie and
Yes,
the idyllic environment with all the Barbies working together. Like we could have that. We could
yeah,
work together and build these relationships and take care of one another. It requires a lot of work to shift, but it could happen.
it does. Okay, so we opened up this series talking about how we are at an inflection point. I deeply feel like we're at this really interesting point of work. If an organization gets this right, learns how to better select leaders, what does leadership look like 5 years from now?
Again, it's sort of that Barbie environment. I hate to say it. That's obviously
The
that's a little
dream.
extreme, but really, I think leadership in 5 years is one where I think the people are able to bring a sense of control back to the working world and not feeling
Mm,
like you're constantly on this hamster wheel of just trying to keep up. And we I mean, I'm saying this as a leader myself, is trying to envision a world where people are not in constant burnout, constant derailment mode, and they actually like coming to work and they want to contribute, because I think at their core, people do want to work.
we have
Corporate
to.
America's gotten, yeah, we have to, but I think even and I think they've done some studies of places where there's universal income, that people are
Yeah.
still wanting to work, but they are maybe able to dedicate their time to things that they actually care about. And I think that's a really beautiful thing if we can feel more of a sense of importance about the work that we're doing and not feel like we're having to show up and log in every morning and just do the bare minimum. That just it makes everybody's lives a lot richer. It makes the working environment more pleasant. It builds our relationships. And so I see, we have this path going with tech bros and AI and all of this stuff to just kind of remove everything that gives life meaning, basically.
Yeah.
We can say, wait a second, that's not the path that we need to take. Let's diverge and actually bring back these things that did really color our lives in really cool ways.
Yeah. I thought I had to thumbs down the tech bro lifestyle. It's just so interesting because I remember I referenced earlier like that stat about the percentage of time people spend in conflict at work. I wish we did more studies about like the chaos at work as well, because I do think if in 5 years we've learned to better select leaders, that you would think then work is full of less strife. Like that every
Yeah.
person walks into work and knows, I know what's expected of me. I understand how we operate here. I know how we get things done. And there's less overall strife and confusion about it. But I think chaos just feels like such a constant at work that I'm like, maybe if we learn to measure that, then in 5 years we could say we got better at selecting leaders and the chaos actually went down. We can never control
Yeah.
the world outside. We can't control that chaos ever. You and I both know that. But if
Right.
we can
Right.
control a lot of our internal chaos, and a lot of our internal chaos, I do believe, comes from bad leaders and people who aren't
Yes.
equipped to do the job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been thinking a lot about the element of discomfort in the workplace, and it's something I've just been sitting with lately because there are a lot of things that are supposed to make our lives easier, more efficient, and whatnot that kind of take away some of the, the boring tasks or the redundant things that we spend our time doing. And I think we, especially in America, have such a attitude towards like, let's try to eliminate any kind of discomfort and any sort of stress. And that's always the goal. And lately I've been feeling like, actually, I think that's wrong. I certainly, I would love to reduce my stress levels. I think everyone can
Sure.
benefit from it.
Same.
But I think there is an element of saying, what is bad stress and what is good stress? And what is some of that discomfort that we just have to say is part of life to make sure that we're not just getting complacent, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes that discomfort can help us grow, but it's got to be the right kind of discomfort. So it's yeah, I'm right there with you. I would love to get rid of some of the chaos, but I think if we can rein in some of these things that are unnecessary, then we can have maybe the stress that's actually a little more beneficial to us.
The good stress, the good friction, like discomfort is a sign of growth. Like you're uncomfortable because you're experiencing something potentially you've never experienced before. I don't think it
Right.
should be the outcome of a bad leader creating so much strife amongst everybody that you're uncomfortable at work because you have to go navigate that every single day. That I think is
Yes.
ridiculous. So
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I agree, like, us being uncomfortable, it's a good thing, it's a good factor, but it not at the outcome of a leader doing it because they're a bad leader.
Exactly. Yes. 100%.
Well, so we have asked everybody this season, yourself included, what's one thing organizations keep getting wrong about how they choose and develop their leaders? And what does it look like to actually get it right? As we wrap up this series, is there anything else you want to add to the people who are listening?
Yeah, I forgot. We've unpacked this so much over
So
the
much.
course of these
I
4
know.
episodes.
I'm like, we're trying to
It's
get
hard to
here.
find something new, but I think it is really the being able to question what what has been done before and is that serving us? And if not, then finding the small ways to make some changes to bring about some bigger change.
Yeah. Why I was telling someone the other day, like the number one question I used to ask my mom was like, why? I would irritate her with every single why. I'd be like, why are we doing that? Why is it like that? Why this? Why that? And she was like, you ask so many annoying questions. And I was like, well, I just grew up into an adult who also does the same thing. But that has kind of led me to like have more fun in HR than I thought I ever could have had. Because once you start unraveling the why behind the way we do everything, you start to realize potentially there's no data to back it up. There's
Right.
no process that says you have to do it that way. And then you get to
Right.
start imagining a very different world for yourself. And that
Yes.
sounds a little bit like a fantasy, but I love that. That's what keeps me coming back to this work day after day is that the
Yes.
why to a lot of the reasons we do things are it's not set in stone. And we don't always have
Right.
to do it the same way.
Exactly. Right there with you.
This has been such a treat to get to meet everyone at Hogan, to talk with you all about the data. I'm such a data nerd, and you all gave me so much good food for thought. Um, for people looking to get in touch with you, learn more about the assessment, learn more about Hogan, what's the best way for them to reach out?
LinkedIn, of course.
Love
Um,
our
yeah,
playground.
LinkedIn and yeah, that's where we live these days. And I don't love social media, so that's probably about the only place to find me
Good.
right now.
Good.
But otherwise, of course, our website and
Yeah.
Hogan has social media on other platforms as well.
Yeah.
But that's the best way for sure.
Allison, I'm so grateful for our time together. I've learned so much throughout this series. You've given me like a new zest for life when it comes to leaders. I'm usually complaining about how awful they are. And now I'm like, you know what? I can complain, but I can actually share some data about it too. So I just want to build a future where we're not constantly disappointed by the leaders we have. And I think we can do that.
Agreed. It is a worthy goal.
Yay. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much.